The CEO's eyes were closed, but she wasn't sleeping. Evelyn Harper had built a $1 billion empire by watching people when they thought no one was looking. Tonight, alone in the glass tower that bore her company's name, she wanted to know what kind of man worked in the shadows of her success. The night janitor entered at 2:47 a.m., pushing his cart with the careful quiet of someone used to being invisible. He didn't know she was testing him. He didn't know that in 60 seconds he would say something that would unravel everything she thought she understood about power, protection, and the promises we make to the dead. If you want to see how a single moment of kindness can expose a company's darkest secrets, stay with me until the end. And when you do, hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The 53rd floor of Harper Industries never slept, but at this hour, it pretended to. Evelyn Harper sat motionless in the leather chair of Conference Room C, her breathing deliberately slow, her posture carefully arranged to suggest exhaustion rather than observation. Through her barely closed eyelids, she watched the reflection in the darkened window, waiting. She had learned this trick from her father, the man who had built this company from nothing and taught her that true character only revealed itself when people believed they were alone. Board members who smiled in daylight meetings showed their real faces in empty hallways. Executives who praised collaboration sabotaged rivals when the lights went down. And Evelyn, who had spent 15 years climbing from junior analyst to CEO, had made it her business to know exactly who people were when the performance ended. Tonight, she was testing the night janitor. His name was Noah Brooks, according to the employee database. 34 years old, employed for 8 months, consistently punctual, no disciplinary issues, the kind of anonymous efficiency that corporate systems loved and corporate leadership ignored. She had never spoken to him, had never really looked at him, until last week when her head of security mentioned something unusual. The night janitor on 53 asked about the mechanical room access logs, Tom Reeves had said during their weekly briefing, wanted to know why certain systems were running during off hours when the floors were supposed to be empty. Most CEOs would have dismissed it. Evelyn had built her career on not dismissing anything. "What did you tell him?" she had asked. That it wasn't his concern, that he should focus on his job. And did he? Tom had hesitated. He did his job. But he kept looking, not in a suspicious way, more like concern. Concern. The word had stayed with her for 3 days. In a building full of people paid to care about quarterly earnings and shareholder value, the janitor was concerned about systems running in empty spaces. It was either remarkably naive or remarkably observant. Evelyn needed to know which. So tonight, she had stayed late, dismissed her assistant, turned off most of the lights, positioned herself in the conference room with the glass walls where anyone passing by could see her, and she had waited. The soft squeak of cartwheels announced his arrival at 2:47 a.m., exactly on schedule. Evelyn controlled her breathing, kept her face relaxed, her body still. Through the reflection, she watched him approach. Noah Brooks moved with the economical grace of someone who had learned to navigate spaces without disturbing them. He was tall, lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and the kind of weathered hands that came from years of physical work. His uniform was clean but worn, the Harper Industries logo fading on the pocket. He pushed his cart with one hand, the other holding a spray bottle with the casual competence of long practice. He paused outside the conference room, noticing her through the glass wall. Evelyn watched his reflection as he stood there, perfectly still, deciding what to do. The easy choice would be to move on, come back later when the room was empty. That was what most people would do. Avoid the complication of a sleeping executive. Instead, he carefully opened the door. The quiet click of the latch seemed loud in the silence. Noah entered slowly, his movements even more careful now, clearly trying not to wake her. Evelyn maintained her facade of sleep, tracking his approach through the window's reflection and the subtle awareness of his presence in the room. He didn't start cleaning immediately. She heard him set down the spray bottle, heard the soft rustle of fabric. Then she felt it. The weight of something being draped gently across her shoulders. A jacket. His worn denim, still warm from his body, smelling faintly of laundry detergent and clean work. What happened next, Evelyn would remember for the rest of her life. Noah's voice, barely above a whisper, so quiet she almost missed it, I'm sorry I couldn't keep her warm, but I can keep you warm. I promise. No one should be alone in the cold. Not again. Never again. The words hit her like a physical blow. There was something in his tone. Not madness, not confusion, but a grief so deep and so carefully controlled that it had transformed into an iron vow. He wasn't talking to her. He was talking to someone who wasn't there, someone he had failed to protect. Evelyn's carefully maintained composure nearly cracked. She wanted to open her eyes, wanted to demand an explanation, wanted to understand what tragedy had carved that kind of promise into a man's soul. But she held still, barely breathing, as Noah moved away. She heard him cleaning, the soft spray of solution, the gentle wipe of cloth on glass, the careful attention to detail that suggested he took pride in work that most people considered beneath notice. He worked around her without making a sound, treating her presence with a respect that felt almost protective. 15 minutes later, he was gone. The conference room gleamed. The jacket remained on her shoulders. Evelyn sat up slowly, her heart beating harder than it had during any hostile takeover negotiation. She pulled the jacket closer, feeling the worn fabric, the weight of it, the lingering warmth. In the pocket, she found a small photograph, bent at the corners. A woman with kind eyes and a little girl with ribbons in her hair. On the back, written in careful print, Emma and Lily, Maine, 2019. 5 years ago. Evelyn stared at the photo, at the woman who was clearly gone, at the child who would be older now, and something shifted in her chest. Something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. She had built her empire on reading people, on understanding motivation, on knowing exactly what drove human behavior. She understood greed, she understood ambition, she understood fear and pride and the desperate hunger for success. But this quiet vow to a ghost, this promise to protect strangers from a cold he couldn't protect someone else from, this she didn't understand at all. Evelyn stood, still holding the jacket, and walked to the window. Below, the city sprawled in a carpet of lights, millions of people living millions of stories she would never know. Somewhere down there, Noah Brooks was probably heading home to his daughter, carrying the weight of a promise that seemed to govern his entire life. And up here, in her glass tower, Evelyn realized she had just discovered something far more valuable than efficiency ratings or clean floors. She had discovered someone who still believed in promises. The next morning, Evelyn called her head of security into her office. Tom Reeves arrived promptly at 8, his expression already guarded. He knew that tone in her voice, the one that meant something had shifted in the careful equilibrium of Harper Industries. "Tell me about Noah Brooks," Evelyn said without preamble. Tom's eyebrows rose slightly. "The janitor? What about him?" "Everything. Where he came from, why he's here, what he was before this. With respect, Ms. Harper, he's a night janitor. His background check was clean. He does his job. That's all we need to know." "No," Evelyn said quietly. "That's all we bothered to know. There's a difference." She watched Tom process this, saw the moment he decided to take her seriously. He pulled out his phone, accessing files. "Noah Brooks, hired 8 months ago through the standard service company we contract with. Previous employment was, let me see, construction work in Maine, some automotive repair, general maintenance. No college degree. References checked out. Lives in a rent-controlled apartment in Queens with his 6-year-old daughter, single father, wife deceased." "How did she die?" Tom looked up, surprised by the question. "I don't have that information. We don't typically find out." "Ms. Harper, I'm not sure this is—" "Tom." Evelyn's voice carried the steel that had made her famous in boardrooms across 3 continents. "When I ask you to find something out, I'm not requesting your opinion on whether it's relevant. I'm telling you to do it." "Yes, ma'am." After he left, Evelyn sat alone in her office, Noah's jacket folded carefully on the chair beside her desk. She had meant to return it immediately, had meant to summon him up here, hand it back with a polite thanks, maintain the proper distance between executive and employee. But something stopped her. The photograph in the pocket. The promise whispered in the dark. The question of what kind of man made a vow like that and actually meant it. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Chen, her CFO, reminding her about the merger meeting at 10. The Titan acquisition was entering its final phase, a $3.2 billion deal that would double Harper Industries' market share and cement her reputation as one of the most successful CEOs of her generation. Evelyn had spent 18 months engineering this merger, had outmaneuvered 3 competitor bids, had negotiated terms that would make her board members weep with joy when the announcement went public next month. But as she prepared for the meeting, gathering files and financial projections, she kept thinking about the janitor who noticed systems running in empty spaces, about the kind of attention to detail that came from actually caring about what happened in the dark. The merger meeting lasted 4 hours. Lawyers and accountants filled 2 conference rooms, reviewing final documentation, confirming compliance standards, ensuring every clause of the agreement was ironclad. Evelyn presided over it all with her usual precision, catching discrepancies that others missed, pushing back on language that seemed too vague, demanding clarity where others were willing to accept ambiguity. "You're in rare form today," Marcus murmured during a brief break, even more detail-oriented than usual. "What's got you so focused?" Evelyn considered the question. "Just making sure we're not missing anything important." "We're not. I've triple-checked everything. This deal is clean." "Then we have nothing to worry about." But as the meeting concluded, as everyone congratulated themselves on the impending success, Evelyn found herself thinking about Noah's question to security, about systems running when buildings should be empty, about the things people noticed when they weren't blinded by the promise of profit. That night, she stayed late again. Same conference room, same carefully arranged posture of sleep, same test. Noah arrived at 2:48 a.m., 1 minute later than the previous night. He paused when he saw her in the same position, same chair, and something flickered across his face. Not suspicion exactly, but awareness. The kind of